Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. All right, folks, Big Paul here with another Anabolic Q&A. We got some good ones today. We're going to talk about training, diet, how not to crash your estrogen while taking Primo or Masteron, and I have a good one from an internet troll. I'm going to have my internet troll question segment in the Q&A this week, and we're going to dig into all that in just 1 second. All right, first question I got here is from Marky Mark 7278. He says, when training in the off season for size, how do you feel about more sets and reps on 2 to 3 exercises versus multiple exercises and less sets? I tend to lean in the favor of less exercises. At the end of the day, it's really about total weekly volume. From what I found in my experience in training over the years, I know some people like to bounce from exercise to exercise and doing multiple exercises. I like to pick like 2 or 3 per body part that work well for me. And I'll be honest with you, I don't switch my exercises around that often. I pretty much just stick with the same crap that works. I don't know how true this is, but there was a story that Ronnie Coleman used the same workout with the same exercises his entire career, from start to finish, from the time he started lifting at the gym that he lifted at there in Texas. The name escapes me right now, but he used the same routine and the same exercises his entire career. If it worked for Ronnie, it works for me. So for me, for example, I know what works well for me on chest, and I have a couple pressing movements that I really like and a fly movement that I really like. So I usually just run those 2 exercises in my chest routine. So I will do the, I think it's the Atlantis press, incline press that I use right now. Sometimes I'll use the Panada press, and then I also have a pec deck machine. And so those are the only 2 exercises I do for chest. And I have a pretty big chest. I know some people will say otherwise, but that works for me. So at the end of the day, it's really what you like the best, what you get, what gets you up and gets you going to the gym. But I have found for me, like, I really don't start getting a pump or a good feel from an exercise until I get a couple sets into it. And I also feel like the more you do an exercise, the more you master it. There does come a limit where sometimes you need to sub an exercise out where you stop making progress on it. So for example, a machine, you may have maxed out the reasonable amount of weight that you can use on a machine, and you need to move on to another type of exercise to replace that. So for example, I used to squat a lot. I used to do deadlifts a lot. I don't really squat anymore. It just became unreasonable for me to do squats with my age, with my knee injury history, with the amount of weight that I have to use for growth. The risk was too high versus the reward. So I stopped doing squats, and I do hack squats for quads. So that has changed for me. But anyway, it's ultimately up to you. It's about total volume for week. You want to be somewhere near your maximum recoverable volume per week, and that varies depending on intensity as well. So if you're taking everything to absolute failure or beyond, you're going to have to use lower volume. If you're keeping reps in reserve and you're not going to failure, then you're going to need more volume. So it really just depends on your intensity. There's a lot of variables there. But at the end of the day, do what gets you in the gym and what you like. All right, next question from Rick Noche 79. I think that's how you would say it, or Rick Nose, I don't know. When adjusting your food intake in the off season, do you adjust your carb intake, or do you just move around your protein and fats? I pretty much stick with the same protein and fat intake through the entire off season. And for the most part on contest prep as well, carbs are the variable for me that I move up and down. Occasionally, I might make small modifications to my fat intake or my protein intake, but it's very minimal. But carbs are really the wild card in the diet. And there are no essential carbs. There are essential fats. There are essential amino acids. So carbs are really the variable that you can play with the most when it comes to a diet. I use carbs to fill out in the off season to get myself into a caloric surplus. There's all sorts of evidence that carbs are the best source of fuel for doing muscle building, hypertrophy style workouts. If you think about it, it's the muscle really is 3/4 water and carbohydrates at the end of the day. It's only 1/4 of its actual protein structures, something like that. Don't quote me on the exact math. So you would think that we would want to fill those up with glycogen. The muscles run off of glucose for the most part when doing extreme activity, lifting activity. So it makes the most sense to use carbohydrates as your primary fuel source in the off season. And then when you need to cut to create a deficit, you just pull those carbs back down. It's really that simple for me. All right, Playboy Carlos asks how to get back into the gym rhythm after dealing with an injury. I have had some pretty major injuries. I ruptured my ACL. I've torn my UCL in my elbow. I tore my adductor, and I never missed the gym for any of them. I keep myself in a routine. I work around them. Obviously, if you have a torn ACL, you're not going to be able to train legs. But I just did upper body. I kept myself in a routine that way. I think that is the best way to keep yourself going, is to keep in the gym. And if you have an injury on one side, you can train unilaterally. I don't remember the exact study, but I saw it at some point where there is some evidence that even training unilaterally will help prevent atrophy on the side that you aren't using. You don't have to dig around and see if you can find that study. But for me, I never miss the gym. I just don't. I figure out a way to get in, work around things unless I'm sick. That's the only time I take off. So the best way to deal with an injury is to learn how to work around it and to keep yourself into the gym. All right, next question is from No Gaze Allowed. How many years, realistically, did it take you to develop 20-inch arms? When I first started training, they blew up and gained 1.5 to 2 inches in the first year, but now it feels like they've just been crawling along. I mean, everybody's going to have those newbie gains. That's just how it goes. We all gain the most in the first year. There's really a couple points in your bodybuilding journey that you're going to gain a bunch of weight or a bunch of muscle. When you're having the newbie gains, when you first start in the gym, that's the time. When you start using PEDs the first time, you're going to have a sudden jump in gains. When you finally figure out how to follow a structured diet, this is another time when people click and have a bunch of gains, and it eventually ends. And the other time is the first time you ever catch a post-show rebound. So you really have these handful of opportunities to make massive gains during your bodybuilding career, and then outside of that, it's just creeping along. Dante Trudell told me a thing about arms many years ago. He goes, you want bigger arms? You want your arms to grow by an inch? Gain 20 pounds. They'll grow. So that's the thing that the advice that I have for people. If you're concerned about your arms being small, but you've only gained 5 pounds, they're not going to grow that much. So the bigger you are, the bigger your arms are going to get. I will say this, some things that I have changed with my training, specifically arm training. I did not develop my arms until later on, and I would say my arms are still probably my weakest point, my weakest body part. They still have some ways to go, but when I finally started seeing growth in my arms is when I checked my ego at the door and I stopped heaving around heavy weights. I go to the gym and I always see 18, 19-year-old guys that weigh 170 pounds standing next to me, doing dumbbell curls. I'm using the 35s and getting a good squeeze, and they're over there slinging around the 50s, and they have 13-inch arms. So when I learned to keep my ego out of it and learned how to contract and get a really good contraction with arm exercises, find things that keep constant tension on the arms, my arms started to grow. But at the end of the day, it's simply just about getting bigger. If you gain weight, real weight, muscle, if you get bigger, your arms are going to get bigger too. All right, next question is from MD-II3RY. What are signs to look for that Primo, EQ, Mast are crashing your estrogen? Obviously blood work, but it gets pricey doing bloods 3 times a cycle. Actually, you can get an estradiol test done. I think I saw them on Walk-In Labs. An estradiol test is like $40. So it's not that expensive if you just want to get your estradiol checked. But there are some pretty blatant signs that you've crashed your estrogen. The first one I will tell you is you have zero sex drive. You don't want to have sex at all. You completely lose interest. That to me is the biggest sign. The other one, joints. My joints start getting creaky when my estrogen is crashed. Start feeling lethargic. Zero motivation to work out. Recovery kind of sucks as well. So those are some things to look out for. That's usually what I see with crash estrogen is you just feel like shit. You don't have any sex drive. Your joints start to hurt. But I to be honest with you, I've seen very few people that have actually crashed their estrogen from Primo, EQ, or Masteron. I have seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but most people do not have that experience. If you're a low estrogen converter, that definitely can happen. But I would say people that are low estrogen converters are more rare than the guys that are high estrogen converters. Most people, I would say 9 out of 10 people that I see, their blood panels tend to convert estrogen at a high rate. There are exceptions. I've seen some people literally with no AIs running testosterone only, and they have like 5 estradiol. But they're rare. It's like a 1 out of 100 type of situation. I don't see those types of people very often. And to be honest, with those types of people, typically things that convert more heavily to estrogen tend to work better. I've seen those guys respond really well to D-bol, to nandrolone and test. Those are the guys that I think that respond well to those types of cycles. I'm not a fan of D-bol, especially for people that are heavy estrogen converters. D-bol is just going to make you grow boobies. But for that rare person that has low estradiol, it can be something that can be leveraged. All right, I hope I'm not slaughtering this one. It's from Lucas Zrytkowski, 3373. I got a question for you regarding carb backloading. What's your opinion on it? I'm currently eating this way, and meaning all my meals are protein heavy with small amounts of fat throughout the day, and my last meals are heavier than carbs. Yeah, I did carb backloading for several years. When I got back into the gym, it works really well for fat loss. I like it with my workouts at the end of the day. When I first started working with Dr. Todd, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and I had a bunch of fat I needed to lose, we did carb backloading. So I would do protein, and I would do like coconut oil or MCT oil during the day, medium chain triglycerides to help speed up fat burning. And then at night after my workout, my post-workout, I would have a heavy carb meal, usually with rice and chicken. It worked really well. I got lean on it. I feel like carb backloading is also a nice choice for people that have nighttime cravings. That was my issue before, is that I would crave carbs before bedtime. I'd have these huge cravings and I couldn't control them. And so the carb backloading really helped me deal with that. And if you're a person that has nighttime cravings, carb backloading can be a good option for a diet. All right, next question. Just Do It EO7BV. He asked, the various bodybuilding podcasts always answer the how to train abs in general, non-specific ways. In detail, how do you guys train abs from diet, exercise, frequency? Much respect for what you guys provide. One of the best podcasts out there. So this is the mistake that I think that everybody makes on training abs. Every other body part you train through progressive overload and resistance training. You're trying to increase weight, you use resistance training and to improve those muscles. When I go to local bodybuilding shows, I see a bunch of dudes standing on stage with zero abdominal development. And I think there is this strange fear amongst the gym bros that if they train abs with weights, that they're going to somehow make their waist blocky and they're going to look silly. What looks even more silly on the stage is having zero abs when you're at 5% body fat. That looks goofy. So if you want your abs to grow, they're just a muscle like any other muscle in your body. You want to train them with weights, progressively increasing weights. I use resistance. I'll use either the cable crunches or I will use the hammer strength weighted ab crunch machine. And I keep my reps higher, 15 to 20 rep range, but I do try to use heavy weights to build thick, chunky abdominals, those thick abdominals that show through on stage. People that don't have them, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen these guys with these flat abdominals and they're zero development and you can't see anything. So if you want your abs to grow, train them with some resistance. It's not a ton. I hit my abs twice a week, 3 to 4 sets, nothing crazy with resistance training. That's it. All right, my next question here is from Easy Reef. My question is about DNP. If you'd rather not talk about it, that's okay, but I know this because it's kind of why I'm asking. I've noticed that when people talk about pro cycles, they never talk about DNP. Is that because it's truly not used that often, or is it because it's dangerous and misused by people, so they keep it hush-hush? I'll be honest with you, I know almost no one that uses DNP for a cut. No one. There are a few. There are a few people out there, and I'm sure there are some pros that use it. I have never had to use DNP to get shredded. And from what I understand, DNP makes you feel like absolute dog shit when you take it. You feel awful. You don't want to train. You feel crappy. And you already feel crappy enough on contest prep. So I don't want to make myself feel even crappier. And there's also the question with DNP, the margin between a therapeutic dose and a toxic dose is very small. It's extremely small. And I don't know about you, but I personally do not trust a UGL to dose it properly. And if you end up in a situation where you think you're taking X, but you're really taking Y, that might mean a trip to the hospital and your contest prep is over. God only knows what else you're frying to. I've actually heard of people, and I know of a guy whose temperature got completely out of control while on DNP, and he had to soak in a bath of ice to get his body temperature back down into a normal range so he didn't fry himself. I personally don't use it. I would never recommend it to a client. I don't think it's necessary. I think people are looking for a fast, easy way out. We're already using plenty of stuff that should make fat burning a lot easier. You don't need DNP on top of it. All right, next question is from my good friend Mr. X 1270. He's been on my channel since day one. Mr. X disagrees with just about 90% of everything I say, but I still love you, Mr. X. I appreciate your support, and I'm glad you watch my channel. I really do appreciate it. He says, I'm still trying to figure out this whole coaching thing. People are paying out their asses for something they should be able to figure out themselves. Just mind-boggling to me that this coaching stuff. Well, here's what I have to say about that. I do coach people. I never twist anybody's arm into coaching. And I've always had a coach. And I've always felt like I come out better from having a coach. A football player should be able to play a football game without a coach. Football's not that complicated. Really, at the end of the day, you tackle, you block, you catch the ball, you throw the ball. It's not that complicated, but guys cannot hold themselves accountable without a coach. You should be able to do your job without a boss, but 99% of people are incapable of keeping themselves accountable and being productive without somebody looking over their shoulder. You should be able to play soccer without a coach. You should be able to be a wrestler without a coach. You should be able to learn how to play a musical instrument without an instructor. It's all the same thing. The key thing here is it's really difficult to be objective about yourself. There's been very few people in the history of bodybuilding that could do it alone. Dorian Yates might be the one exception. He was able to do it alone, but Dorian was a one of a kind. There's only been one Dorian ever. And I've personally found, for me, that when I engage a coach, I end up learning a lot. I have somebody to bounce ideas off of. I use mentors also in business. I have paid for mentors in my business side of things. Every time I have invested in mentorship with somebody that is competent, I end up better for it. It's how you learn. I mean, you can think about college. Do you really need college? You should be able to pick up the books and read the books yourself and learn everything that you need for the degree. You don't need college. You don't need an instructor. It's the same argument. But at the end of the day, most people can't do that. 99.9% of people can't do that. You might be the exception. And I'll tell you, the one guy that shows up at a bodybuilding show that doesn't have a coach usually finishes last place. It's just been my experience. Your mind is all over the place. You can't think straight when you're on contest prep. You make stupid decisions. I know I would. And for me, I will always have a coach. I will always have mentors that I pay if I'm trying to get better and improve at something. I want to be with the best. I want to learn from the best, and I am willing to pay for that. Matt Gerard, 96. Have you ever had a gym nemesis, meaning a guy similar size, a build to you that you use as a measuring stick to gauge your progress up against? I've never really had a gym nemesis, but I did have a guy that sort of inspired me to get into bodybuilding, and I silently watched him. There was this dude when I joined the gym when I was in high school. His name was Carl. He was the first real bodybuilder I have ever seen in my life, and he was ripped. He was tan. He looked to me like a mass monster, but he probably was only about 210 pounds. But I saw that guy, and I thought to myself, I want to look like that guy one day. That's the dude I want to look like. And how in the world do I look like Carl? So that was the dude I measured myself up against. I used to be more competitive when I was younger and constantly trying to look better than this other person or compete with other people. I have really evolved past that. To me, the battle is with myself. I just want to be a better version of myself each and every day. I want to do my best to improve. I don't get into the whole competitive thing. Even like when I get on stage, I don't even really notice the other guys I'm competing against. And I remind my clients of this sometimes too. You can't control who's on stage next to you, but you can control how hard you work and what you do to get ready for your show. So that's the part that you should focus on. Don't worry about what other people are doing. All right, next one here is from JPTube6422. How did Arnold's muscles look so big and monstrous when he did low-carb diets? I mean, those guys back then, I would say they were moderate carb diets, but yeah, they and I've thought about this a lot. They did not do cardio like we do now to get ready for shows. They just trained more. You never saw Arnold on the step mill or on the treadmill or riding the exercise bike. None of those guys really did it wasn't really even a part of their, as far as I know, wasn't a part of their routine. They just did more volume. And I have to wonder if that doesn't keep you fuller getting ready for a show. They also weren't getting as lean as guys get now. They you like it or not, the Arnold and those guys, when they were on stage, they were probably 8-9% body fat would be my guess. They didn't have shredded glutes. They didn't have shredded hamstrings. They still had a little bit of fat on the lower back. If you take a look at pictures of Arnold when he was at his peak, they weren't that lean. So you can stay full. It's easier to stay full when you aren't super lean. And I wouldn't say that Arnold was super full and round when he was on stage compared to the guys now. Another thing too, a lot of those guys were using D-ball in contest prep. Everybody looks full when they're running D-ball. So it's probably the extra water retention from D-ball. But it's the trade-off is you don't get that lean. You don't get that hard, crisp look like guys have now. So I guess it's really in the eye of the beholder. But Arnold and those guys didn't get that lean. They didn't do a shit ton of cardio like guys do now. They did a lot more volume. And I suspect that the D-ball was a factor in why they stayed full going into shows. All right, and my last question of the day is from, this is the Internet Troll of the Day Award. This is from Shifting Truth Shit 2380. I can't imagine why somebody with a screen name like that would be an internet troll. He says, "Have you got down?" Spelled D-O-W-N-E-S. Well, my dude, if you want to sling insults at people questioning their intelligence, you might want to make sure you spell the word correctly. All right, folks, that's all I got for you. I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching my channel. If you want to support me, you can support my sponsor, First Detachment Nutrition. Discount code is AB10. I have a link to their site in my description below. Thank you for watching. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.